Hi, Minister Freeland. Good to have you back on our show.
Hi, Vassy. Good to see you.
I appreciate you making the time. This summer, you said that you see a path to a soft landing for Canada's economy. Is that no longer true?
No, that is still absolutely true.
Why do you view it's true? And more specifically, in the scenarios that your document outlined today, the two scenarios, the critique that I've heard so far from economists is even the downside scenario isn't realistic. It's not, kind of down enough, that you may be pointing too rosy a picture.
Well, look, Vassy, our base case scenario, as I know you know very well, that is not something that is invented by the very smart economists here in the Department of Finance. That is done independently. Since 1994, Canada has had this great practice of having our base case fiscal scenarios be created by an average of the forecasts of private sector economists to take any politics out of it. And so we surveyed private sector economists in September, and the base case is based on what they were saying then. Now, I agree with you that a lot of people have become a little more concerned since then. And that's why we did present a downside scenario to show Canadians we get that, we understand, and probably most importantly, to show that even if those more pessimistic views do come to pass, we're kind of stress testing where Canada is. And the reality is we will be fine. We have the fiscal capacity to deal with it.
Can you translate in layman's terms what you mean by we will be fine? And I'll tell you why I'm asking. I imagine a number of Canadians are here listening to, not yourself, but other economists say that there is a recession coming and that maybe it'll just be a mild one. And I think it's confusing. I think it's worrisome to think people might lose their jobs. And when you say we'll be fine, I'm hoping you can define that in terms that Canadians really understand. Do you mean that no Canadian will lose their job, for example?
Look, Vassy, I think you're right that people are anxious, and that is a totally reasonable and understandable feeling to have. And I think people are anxious because things are tough right now. And I think people are anxious because there is a lot of uncertainty out there in the world. There are a lot of things happening that haven't happened before. So what I can't offer you, Vassy, or your many, many viewers, I can't pretend, and I'm not going to fake it, that I have a crystal ball and I can say exactly what is going to happen. But I can say two things. The first is Canada is in a very strong economic position today. We have 400,000 more people working than before COVID. We have one of our historically lowest levels of unemployment. That's a good place to be in an uncertain economic time. And the federal government has the economic resources to support Canadians if things do get worse. That's a reason that you're hearing me talk a lot about fiscal prudence right now, because I want us to be able to come in there and support Canadians if that downward scenario comes true. And really the reassurance I want to offer you and all of your viewers is we have that ability. We will be there if necessary. But then the final thing I want to say is, of all the countries in the world, I really believe there is no country better positioned to get through this challenging time than Canada. That is just the reality. And we should all take some real reassurance from that. And frankly, some pride from that, because Canada has come through COVID in a really strong position. And that's not because of me. That's because so many Canadians have worked so hard and done such a good job.
I've heard you over the last number of months describe the reasons for the inflationary environment we're in, like so many other leaders, as being kind of out of our control, right? There's lots happening, obviously very negatively with Russia, with supply chains, with COVID policies pursued in China and the effect that's had on supply chains, kind of exogenous factors and how they've impacted the cost of living in this country. Do you concede that those same factors could in fact take that downside scenario that your government has laid out, albeit, yes, I take your point from private forecasts, but do you concede that downside scenario, because of those factors, could be a lot worse, that there is a risk of something that is not mild and just a tiny contraction or that we can weather no matter what? And how worried about that are you?
Well, look, again, Vassy, I am really not going to pretend that we have a crystal ball here in the Department of Finance. And when people say there's a lot of uncertainty, what does that actually mean? You said in plain language, what that means really is people aren't really sure exactly what's going to happen. And I think it's really important to be honest with Canadians about that, because I think Canadians are really smart. We did something that you don't always do in a fall economic statement or a budget, which is we were very explicit about the possibility for a downside scenario. And we said there were real risks that would come to pass, because we believe in being open and transparent. And so really, my answer to you, and I think you're asking an important question. It's something a lot of people ask me all the time, not just when I'm wearing a suit, but when I'm wearing sweats and I'm buying groceries myself for my family at home. People are worried. They want to know what's going to happen. I can't tell you for sure what's going to happen. But what I can tell you is we as a government have the fiscal firepower to support people come what may. And what I can also say is Canada, of all the countries in the world, is the best position for these challenging times because so many people have a job right now. That is really, really important. And that is the most important aspect of our recovery from the COVID recession.
And I certainly take that point. And I also will acknowledge, I know your time is limited because your schedule is jam-packed. So I'll just conclude by asking you about Canadians who are, yes, working, but I can't tell you the number of emails we have about Canadians who are working and still living paycheck to paycheck right now. And like you described, truly anxious about the cost they face. I know that you've telegraphed for about 3 weeks now and certainly put a punctuation point on it in this, that the help that you're going to be offering or the relief that you'll be offering in this cost of living crisis will be targeted to people who you characterize as needing it most. I'm wondering why people who are struggling with the prospect of a cold winter and their home heating bills don't fall into that category for you. Both the Conservatives and the NDP have proposed relief of some sort on those bills through the suspension of either the carbon tax or the GST. Is it because of politics that your government won't entertain that? I know you've made the argument that it's about not exacerbating the inflationary environment, but that's kind of targeted too. And those people we've heard from need a lot of help.
Okay, so lots of questions in there. Let me try to give some quick, succinct answers. The first one is the GST checks are going out tomorrow. Okay, that's very soon. And that is up to nearly $500 for Canadian families, 11 million households. And a lot of those households are exactly the same households who do use home heating oil. So that is real support, and it's coming right now when people need it. The other thing that I will say, which I think is so important, you talked right at the beginning, Vassy, about getting so many emails from people who are working, but still struggling to make ends meet. I hear from probably some of exactly the same people, and I worry about those people a lot. And that's why, from my perspective, one of the most important measures in this fall economic statement is that we are creating a new advance payment system for the Canada Workers Benefit. It's now going to come in 4 payments. You're going to get it ahead of time, not for the year behind you. That is going to cover 4.2 million Canadians. 1 in 5 working Canadians are going to get this top up. And I think we all are going to agree that people who are working really, really hard at really badly paid, but really important jobs, they need that help. They deserve it. And starting in April, they're going to get it.
Just really quickly, are you opposed, though, to ask bluntly, to what the Conservatives and the NDP have proposed simply because of politics?
My starting point is always to do what is right for Canadians. That is what we have done in this fall economic statement. It's what we did in the budget. And I would describe it as finding a balance between compassion and responsibility, finding a balance between meeting people's needs today and investing in the future.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Minister Freeland, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Vassy. Really appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Vassy Kapelos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.